So, welcome to part 2 of our show on electromagnetic frequencies and how to avoid their dangers. We recorded part 1 earlier this evening. So, if you haven't seen that show already, please, I'll put a link to it below in the show notes. And this is part 2. The term electromagnetic field, or EMF, describes an area of influence created by an electric current and manifests in the environment around the current. Some people think that, I don't know, EMFs must be benign because they're ever present in the home and the workplace, enabling dozens of communication devices to function. However, research suggests that EMFs are biologically active, harmful pollutants, which cause various diseases. Since the development of technology, electronic products are now integrated into the human lifestyle at such a fundamental level that exposure to EMF is often impossible to avoid. Any movement of electrical charge causes both a magnetic field and an electric field, and this forms an electromagnetic field of a more complex nature. Any exposure to EMFs will involve the induction of an electrical current within the body. This current will flow to Earth if it's given a path to do so, and may cause the stimulation of nerves and muscles. In a conventional oven, heating is caused by a current flowing through the resistance of the heating element. This resistance converts the electrical energy into heat. This also happens in your body when exposed to EMFs. Anything that uses an electrical current creates an electromagnetic field. Some appliances create stronger fields than others. The higher the electrical power the device uses, the stronger the field that results. So, when purchasing household electrical items, always go for low EMF options where possible. For example, purchasing a gas stove instead of an electric stove, as the electric stove creates a higher magnetic field. Always consider whether you really need the appliance, as some electrical items cause unnecessarily high EMFs. One example of this is an electric blanket. Although it's a popular item and a lot of people like to have one, and it helps people get through the winter, creates a very, very strong EMF field. And it's something which can easily be replaced with a conventional blanket. Power lines and mobile phone towers are huge sources of EMFs. It's never a good idea to purchase a house or to live anywhere near a cell tower or power lines. Power lines have been known to cause electrical sensitivities in some people, and living close to mobile phone towers has been linked to many serious health effects due to constant long-term exposure to strong electromagnetic fields. The introduction of 5G, which is something we talked about, that Annie was talking about in part 1, is of considerable concern. The strongest and most dangerous EMFs ever. It's like living inside a microwave oven, and Annie was talking about the dangers of microwave ovens. The potential health risks of EMFs are enormous. EMFs are the cause of a variety of sicknesses, ranging from minor to severe. Complicating the issue is the fact that some people are affected more than others by exposure to EMFs. In people who are affected, symptoms can vary from mild, such as headaches or fatigue, to more serious conditions, such as fibromyalgia or leukemia. There are various standards and regulations that have been put in place for EMFs, and the permissible exposure levels may vary from country to country. However, the industry is a powerful lobbying group, and these regulations are often way too lenient. A common belief when it comes to technological advancements is that it's always a positive for society. Innovations have led to more efficient society and better living conditions. Although this may often be true, there's always something to be wary of. 5G is not all positive at all. In fact, it's riddled with negative health effects, very dangerous ones. With this technology being rolled out worldwide, these health conditions could lead to chronic disease, as well as massive global increases in morbidity and mortality. It's important that the public is made aware of the negative effects of 5G, and that's what we're doing on this show tonight, so that they can make decisions for themselves, whether or not the internet speed is worth the many health implications. People need to get back to thinking for themselves. Certainly over the last few years, the last 3 or 4 years, we've become, well, so many people, not all of us, have become used to letting the government do their thinking for them. You can even argue that it goes back to the inception of the welfare state. We've got to start thinking for ourselves and taking responsibility for our own lives and those of our neighbors and loved ones, and stop leaving everything to the state. The radio frequency, RF, portion of the electromagnetic spectrum is the portion used for wireless communication. It ranges from 100 kilohertz to 300 gigahertz. Exposure to RF radiation used in wireless communication has increased markedly over the last decade. People are exposed from their mobile phones, cordless phones, and Wi-Fi access points. Do people still use cordless phones? I don't know. 5G adds a new type of signal to the RF radiation, the millimeter wave, and necessitates millions of new mobile phone base stations worldwide. The carcinogenic potential of 5G technology. The higher frequency bands means much wider bandwidth, with one of the proclaimed features of 5G is it uses the millimeter waveband spectrum. All electromagnetic fields affect living organisms. Causes of effects from near and far fields, as Annie was talking about in part 1, mainly due to heating of the organism where there is evidence of tissue damage and increased temperatures in the body. The specific absorption rate, SAR, is a measure of the rate of radio frequency energy absorbed by the body from the source being measured. And we're talking about mobile phones, aren't we, at the moment? Standard mobile phone use has been linked to headaches, memory loss, lack of concentration, nausea, DNA alteration, stress, and an increased risk of brain cancer, as well as several other health problems. Of course, these health risks are still being debated, and the industry is trying to play them down, as they would. However, it's widely accepted that cutting exposure of mobile phone radiation can only be a positive move. Currently, to evaluate the safety plan for EMF exposure is not a simple job due to the complexity of SAR values for near and far fields. "5G technology is a wireless network technology that was introduced around 2019. It's designed to increase speed and response times on mobile devices. And currently, there is no globalized standard. Exposure to 5G is becoming inevitable wherever you live and work. Supporters of 5G argue that coverage and signal strength will be improved. But with this new technology, there's a great increase in microwave and millimeter wave radiation absorption on a much higher scale than ever before. The effects that this radiation has on insects, birds, mammals, plants, has not been properly tested. But rats exposed to millimeter wave have shown symptoms of arrhythmia and tachycardia. But do the benefits of this small sub-millimeter wavelength technology really outweigh the risks? We don't think so. The animal studies give us a glimpse of the effects that this will have on human health, and it's not a pretty picture. A variety of human studies have been conducted on cancers with regard to mobile phone RF EMF radiation. Carcinogenic effects have been a primary concern with respect to chronic exposure, and indeed a larger number of animal studies as well as mechanistic studies in cultured cells have been conducted. The National Toxicity Program in America has conducted a mega experiment in rats and mice testing exposure to mobile phone RF EMF radiation. In the most recent report from this project, a dose-dependent increase in the incidence of malignant glioma in the brain and heart, known as schwannoma, a rare type of tumor that forms in the nervous system, is in exposed male rats, was reported. I mean, it's a horrible experiments that people do on animals. And we certainly don't condone any of it in the show on this channel. The observed rats were exposed in whole body exposure chambers for 9 hours a day for their entire lives, from before birth to 2 years of age. A clear, fancy spending your all of your life. A clear dose response was observed. An incident of these tumors in exposed rats matched standardized historical incident rates for the same tumor types. Human exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic fields, EMF, is ubiquitous in the modern world and will continue with new technologies unless we step in and stop it. The development of 5G mobile networks infrastructure is happening. New masts are going up every day. Some people in the scientific community have called for a thorough investigation of the RF EMF effects on humans and other living things prior to deployment in order to prevent exposure that may have adverse health effects. But they are being ignored. There are many studies showing genotoxic effects, but DNA is a multifaceted molecule, and it's important to determine the effects of RF radiation on DNA in a comprehensive manner. Altered gene expression and induction of DNA damage can ultimately lead to certain types of cancers. It's widely accepted that any agent causing damage to DNA has the potential to induce cancer. And as Annie said in part one, these bloody things have been put on the roofs of schools. High exposure levels of RF radiation have been associated with localized effects such as heating and burning of tissue. I think we've already said that. Many people spend most of their day using electrical devices, mobile phones, computers, and other devices that give out EMFs. Studies strongly suggest that this long-term exposure can be a factor contributing to higher cancer rates. As long ago as 1987, anybody here remember 1987? The New York Times reported that radiation from power lines, the wiring inside buildings, and electric appliances has been linked to leukemia in children and adults. But rather than taking any note, any interest, the industry has been racing ahead with ever more deadly levels of radiation. Another study has linked power line EMF to a possible increase in Alzheimer's disease. Overall, reducing exposure to EMF from any source may have a cumulative effect of lowering risk to the development of cancer or other diseases. So, how can we protect ourselves? How can we protect ourselves? EMF protection devices. are tools specifically designed to neutralize the effects of electromagnetic radiation. Now, Annie talked about some of these in part one, so I'm only going to cover this very, very briefly. EMF protection devices use a variety of different methods to neutralize the effects of EMFs. Some can block or shield EMFs by creating a barrier between you and the source of the radiation. Now, Annie was talking a little bit about EMF protection pendants. They can deflect EMF away from the body and prevent it from causing any damage. They are often made from a material that can absorb a large amount of energy relative to its mass. The volcanic materials are often used, and silver is quite good as well. Annie was wearing that silver pendant, if you remember, in part one. Absorption is also a very effective method of neutralizing the effects of EMFs. Minerals such as shungite. Now, Annie was talking about shungite, wasn't she? Minerals such as shungite are known for their ability to absorb and change harmful EMFs into waveforms that are more biologically compatible. This explains why there have been so many cases showing that regular wearing of a shungite pendant has resulted in significant health benefits. One thing Annie didn't mention was EMF blocking phone cases. These contain a metallic fabric, mesh, or screen that's designed to block all RF and microwave radiation. But this kind of radiation is radiated from the front and the back and the sides of the phone or other mobile device. But many of the cheaper EMF cases that you can buy are only designed to block radiation from the back of the phone. So it's important to spend a bit more money and get a case that completely blocks all radiation from the phone and not direct it towards the front. EMF blocking cases are designed to act as a Faraday cage around the phone and will typically reduce the incoming radiation to the phone as well. This can potentially increase the battery life of the device, as it will stop the phone searching for signals in areas where the signal is typically low. But they're not 100% effective. They're part of the arsenal of our defense. There are also fold-over pouches. They're quite effective in that they completely block the phone from transmitting signals in lower signal areas. Yeah, smartphone cases allow the user to use the phone, to store their phone in close proximity to the body, and therefore might actually increase exposure rather than reducing it. Generally speaking, as I've mentioned before, generally speaking, the more expensive ones are more likely to be effective than the cheaper ones. These cases are not restricted to mobile phones. You can also get them for tablets and laptops. There are also several forms of metallic fabrics that can be used in EMF shielding clothing. So anyway, that's all for part 2. As I say, if you haven't already watched part 1, please do so. And we'll see you all in the next show. Namaste.